All right, so today, let's dive into something that's super crucial in software development.
Okay.
It's like the DNA of any successful project, really, and that is the software design document,
Yeah.
or SDD for short.
Right.
Now, some of you listening might be thinking documentation. Ugh, that sounds boring.
Yeah.
But trust me on this one, understanding SDDs can be a total game changer.
Yeah, it really can.
Whether you're like a developer, a project manager, or just someone who is kind of curious about how software, comes to life.
It's the blueprint. It's
Yeah,
the roadmap, the
exactly.
guiding light
hmm
for everybody involved.
And for this deep dive, we're using this fantastic article. It's
Yeah.
called Software Design Document. What is it and how to create it? Template included.
Love that.
So we'll unpack why even developers who, they say they hate documentation,
They say they do.
but they secretly find SDDs valuable.
Oh, they do.
And then also like how having this document can actually speed up the coding process.
Well, the key takeaway there is that it minimizes confusion and rework later on.
Yeah.
So imagine building a house without blueprints.
Oh, God.
You'd end up with doors leading nowhere and plumbing that doesn't connect.
Oh, that's a renovation nightmare I'd rather avoid.
So an STD helps us avoid those software development headaches
Yeah,
by getting everyone on the same page from the get-go.
from the start.
Yeah, and the article highlights this point by sharing how developers often prefer to just jump straight into coding.
Yeah, makes sense.
It's tempting, you want to dive right into the hands-on part,
Right.
but that can lead to some major issues down the line.
Like what kind of issues?
Like features might not align with the client's vision,
Right.
or large chunks of code might need to be rewritten because of misinterpretations.
So it's about setting that solid foundation before we start laying the bricks, so to speak. huh?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And speaking of foundations,
Okay.
the article outlines the essential elements of an SDD. So it's like walking through the different rooms of our software house blueprint.
Okay, I like that.
We start with the introduction,
Mm-hmm.
which sets the stage by outlining the document's purpose, the project's scope, and who this document is for.
Right, so it's like a welcoming foyer
Big.
that guides everyone into the rest of the house.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're ensuring that developers, project managers, and even clients, all have that same understanding of the project goals.
Right, and then we move into the project overview and goals.
Okay.
This is where we paint the big picture.
Mm-hmm.
What the software aims to achieve, what problems it solves, and the key milestones we're targeting.
So it's like looking at a detailed floor plan and visualizing how all the rooms fit together.
Exactly.
Okay, so we're not just describing what we're building.
Right.
We're also establishing a timeline and defining what success looks like for this.
Precisely. And this leads us to the heart of the SDD
Okay.
system functionality.
Okay.
Here, we detail exactly what our software will do
Okay.
for its users. Think of it like walking through each room and understanding its purpose.
So instead of just saying this software will have a search function,
Yeah.
we'd actually break down how that search works,
Right.
what kind of results it displays, and how the user interacts with it.
The SDD ensures we're not just thinking about features in isolation,
Yeah.
but rather how they all work together to create a seamless user experience.
Now things are getting exciting.
Yes.
But I can imagine this section can get pretty technical,
It can.
especially when we start talking about architectural design.
Think of this as the blueprint that shows how the entire software structure is organized.
So are we talking about those different architectural styles that the article mentioned, like monolithic and microservices?
You got it.
Okay.
These styles are like choosing different foundations for our software house.
Right.
So a monolithic structure is like building everything under one roof,
Okay.
while microservices are more like building separate modules that connect and work together.
Interesting. So a simple mobile app might use a monolithic structure,
Yeah.
while a complex e-commerce platform might benefit from a microservices approach.
That's a great way to visualize it.
Okay.
The choice depends on the complexity and future needs of the project.
Right. So like thinking long-term with that.
Exactly.
Okay. I'm starting to see how this detailed planning can prevent some major structural issues down the road.
Absolutely.
But let's move into the room-by-room inspection, so to speak.
Okay.
What about the detailed design section?
This is where we zoom in on each component of our software,
Mm-hmm.
almost like an electrician, mapping out where each outlet and light fixture will go.
So we're talking about taking those architectural components and breaking them down into even finer details.
Exactly.
Okay.
We describe each module's purpose, how it functions internally, and how it interacts with other components.
Okay.
This is where things can get granular, involving
Mhm.
diagrams, data structures, and algorithms.
Mhm.
But remember, this level of detail is what empowers developers to implement each component with clarity and precision.
It's fascinating how this documentation sets the stage for smoother collaboration
Yes.
and minimizes errors during development.
Absolutely. And we can't forget about the user experience.
Of course not.
So the user interface design section focuses on how our software will look and feel to the user.
Okay.
This is where we consider things like screen layouts, navigation flow, and the overall aesthetic.
So it's like deciding on the interior design of our software house,
Yeah.
picking the paint colors, arranging the furniture,
Yes.
making sure everything is both functional and visually appealing.
That's a great analogy.
I try.
It's about creating a user experience that is intuitive, efficient, and enjoyable.
And I'm guessing we also need to consider what happens when things don't go as planned.
Absolutely.
Right?
The error handling and recovery section is all about anticipating the unexpected. Like a well-prepared homeowner having a fire extinguisher and a first aid kit. We need to plan for those moments when the software encounters errors or unexpected situations.
So we're not just building a system that works perfectly under ideal conditions.
Right.
We're also building in resilience and safeguards.
We define how the software will detect errors, how it will recover from them, and how it will communicate those issues to the user.
It sounds like we've covered a lot of ground already.
Yeah, we have.
But so far, we've mostly focused on the what of SDDs.
Right.
Let's move on to the how and explore the process of actually creating one.
Sounds good. Let's break down that process step by step.
Awesome.
The first step in creating an effective SDD is laying a solid foundation.
Okay.
And that begins with defining the project and its intended audience.
Right.
So we're talking about like giving the project a clear name,
Yeah.
outlining its core features, and establishing boundaries by specifying, what falls outside the scope.
So this initial step, it sounds like it's all about setting expectations and preventing skep creep later on.
Precisely. We also need to think about like who will be using this SDD.
Right.
Will it be developers, project managers, clients, or all of the above?
That makes sense, yeah. Tailoring the language and the level of detail to the audience ensures that everyone can easily understand it and extract value from the document.
Exactly. Now, once we've defined the what and the who, it's time to move on to the system architecture, the backbone of our software.
Okay.
This is step 2, and it's all about mapping out the structure and how different components will interact.
Okay, so we're going back to those architectural styles.
Right.
Choosing the right foundation for our software house.
We carefully consider whether a monolithic or microservices approach, or perhaps a hybrid, best suits the project's needs.
And this decision is crucial
Yes, it is.
because it impacts scalability, maintainability, and how easily we can adapt the software in the future.
That's right. And we also need to break down the system into its individual components,
Okay.
those essential building blocks that work together to deliver the desired functionalities.
So it's like identifying the different rooms in our house. The living room, the kitchen, the bedrooms.
Exactly.
And for each component, we'd outline its specific role and how it contributes to the overall functionality of the software.
Precisely. We want to be clear about what each component is responsible for, what data it handles, and how it interacts with other components.
So it's a bit like defining the purpose of each room and how people will move between them.
Right. And to make it even clearer, we often create a visual representation, a system architecture diagram.
Okay.
This diagram helps everyone visualize the big picture and see how all the pieces of the puzzle fit together.
It's fascinating how this step forces us to think through the structure and dependencies early on,
Yeah,
potentially preventing those architectural mishaps we talked about earlier.
absolutely. And this meticulous planning leads us to step 3, where we deep dive into each component.
Okay.
It's like taking a closer look at the electrical wiring and plumbing within each room.
So are we talking about getting into the nitty-gritty details of how each component works internally?
Exactly. We give each component a clear name, describe its functionality in detail, outline its responsibilities, define its inputs and outputs, and identify any dependencies on other components.
It sounds like this is where we move from that high-level blueprint to a more detailed specification.
Right. Imagine you're furnishing each room in our software house.
Okay.
You wouldn't just say, we need a bed in the bedroom.
Right.
You'd specify the size, the style, the material, and even how it fits with the rest of the room's decor.
So it's about providing the development team with a clear understanding of what needs to be built.
Exactly. And this level of detail is where STDs really shine because they can help us catch potential problems early on.
I can see how this would prevent those frustrating moments where developers realize halfway through that two components aren't compatible or that a crucial piece of functionality was overlooked.
Exactly. And the article offers some great tips for this step. It suggests using diagrams like flowcharts or UML diagrams to illustrate data flow and component interactions.
Okay.
It also emphasizes the importance of designing components with future changes in mind.
Ah, so we're thinking about scalability and maintainability right from the start.
That's a great way to put it. And remember, this deep dive into each component is an iterative process.
Mm-hmm.
We might need to revisit and refine our design based on feedback from other developers or as the project evolves.
Got it. So it's not about getting it perfect on the first try. It's about
Oops.
being thorough and open to adjustments as we go.
Precisely now, as our software house takes shape, we need to think about the flow of information within it.
Okay.
That's where step 4 comes into data flow and management.
Okay, so we're moving beyond individual components and considering how data travels through the entire system.
Yeah.
Think of it like mapping out the plumbing and electrical systems that connect all the rooms in our house.
Mm-hmm.
We need to identify where data comes from, what types of data we're handling, and how data moves between different components.
So we might be talking about data from user inputs, external databases, or even sensors, right?
Right. We need to specify the format and structure of each data type so that the software can process it correctly.
Okay.
This is where we might consider things like data validation to ensure that the data entered into the system is accurate and complete.
It sounds like this step is crucial for maintaining data integrity and preventing errors.
Absolutely. And we also need to think about data persistence, how and where this information is stored and retrieved,
Okay.
usually involving databases or file systems.
It's like making sure our house has a reliable water heater and a safe place to store valuables.
Exactly. And of course, we can't forget about data security.
Right.
We need to implement measures like encryption access controls and user authentication to protect sensitive information. It's like installing a security system and making sure all the doors and windows are locked.
Precisely by addressing these aspects of data flow and management, we ensure that our software is not only functional, but also secure and reliable.
And that brings us to our final consideration in this stage of SDD creation, the user interface or UI.
Right, this is step 5, and it's where we shift our focus to the user experience.
Okay.
We're essentially designing the interior of our software house, making it intuitive, visually appealing, and enjoyable to use.
Okay, so we're thinking about the layout of the screens, the design of the buttons and menus, and the overall look and feel of the interface.
Exactly. But before we dive into the aesthetics, we need to think about our target users and their needs.
Right.
Who will be using this software? Are they tech-savvy or beginners?
Good point.
Will they be using a desktop computer, a mobile device, or something else?
Right. Or both.
What tasks will they be trying to accomplish?
It's like considering whether our house is designed for a family with young children or for a retired couple. Yeah. The needs and preferences of the occupants will shape the design choices.
That's a great analogy. Once we understand our target users, we can start thinking about the UI style and layout.
Okay.
Do we go for a simple, clean interface or a more complex, feature-rich one?
Yeah, how do we make those choices?
The answer depends on the user's needs and the overall purpose of the software.
So it's about finding that right balance between functionality and usability.
Exactly. And then we need to consider user interaction elements, those buttons, menus, text fields, and checkboxes that allow users to interact with the software. We need to be specific about what each element does when the user clicks or taps on it.
So like making sure the light switches are in logical locations and that the faucets are easy to use.
Right. And just as a well-designed house considers accessibility, we also need to make sure our software interface is accessible to users with disabilities.
Yeah, that's an important point.
It's about ensuring that everyone can use our software comfortably and efficiently.
And finally, we need to think about how information is displayed to the user. Yes.
Will it be in text tables, charts, or a combination of those?
Right. We need to make sure the information is clear, concise, and easy to understand.
It's like choosing the right lighting and furniture arrangement to create a comfortable and functional living space.
Exactly. And just as a well-designed house anticipates potential hazards, we also need to address error handling in our UI.
Okay.
What happens if the user makes a mistake?
Right.
Will the software display clear error messages? How can users recover from errors?
It's about providing clear instructions and safety nets to prevent users from getting frustrated or lost.
Precisely by carefully considering these UI considerations, we can create a software experience that is both enjoyable and efficient for our users.
So we've defined the project, mapped out the architecture, deep dived into components managed data flow, and designed the user interface. What's next in the SDD creation process? Feels like we've built the entire software house at this point, from the foundation to the furniture.
That's right.
But even the most beautiful house needs, like a thorough inspection.
Yeah, before anyone moves in.
Absolutely.
So that brings us to the final stage of SDD creation.
Okay.
Testing, deployment, and planning for the future.
Right.
These steps ensure our software is not only well-designed,
Yep.
but it also functions flawlessly and can adapt to future needs as they come up.
That's the goal.
Okay, so let's start with testing. What are we talking about here?
Think of software testing as a quality assurance check,
Okay.
like a home inspector scrutinizing every nook and cranny of our software house
Right.
to make sure everything is up to code.
So we're going beyond simply checking if the software works.
Right.
We're looking for potential bugs, performance issues, and any areas where the user experience could be improved.
Exactly. And this testing process often involves a dedicated team of quality assurance specialists, or QA, who have a keen eye for detail and a knack for finding those hidden flaws.
It's like having a team of expert detectives combing through our software house,
Yeah.
looking for any cracks in the foundation or loose wires.
That's a great analogy. And the article mentions different types of testing,
Okay.
each with a specific purpose.
Oh,
So
okay.
unit testing examines individual components in isolation, like checking if a light switch turns on the correct light.
Right, so we're testing like the individual parts
Yeah.
and then how they function as a whole.
Integration testing ensures that different components work together seamlessly, like making sure the plumbing and electrical systems don't interfere with each other.
Right, of course.
And then there's system testing,
Okay.
where we verify that the entire software system meets the project requirements. It's like making sure the entire house is structurally sound and meets all building codes.
And finally, we have user acceptance testing, or UAT.
Yes.
Where real users get to try out the software and provide feedback.
Exactly. It's like having a family move into the house for a trial period
I like that.
to see if it meets their needs and lifestyle.
Yeah.
Their feedback helps us identify any areas where the software could be further refined.
So testing isn't a one-time event. It's an iterative process that continues throughout the development lifecycle.
Absolutely. We test, we find bugs, we fix the bugs, and then we retest to ensure everything is working as intended. This continuous testing cycle is what ensures a high-quality software product.
Okay. Our software house has passed all the inspections.
Right.
It's time for the big move-in day, deployment.
Deployment is where we deliver the software to our users,
Okay.
making it accessible and ready to use.
So are we talking about making the software available for installing it on individual computers, or setting it up on a server?
It could be any of those, depending on the type of software and its intended use.
Okay.
We might create an installer file for users to download and run on their own machines, or we might host the software on a server or a cloud platform, making it accessible through a web browser.
It's like handing over the keys to our software house,
Yeah.
making sure the new occupants have everything they need to settle in comfortably.
That's a great way to visualize it. And just as a thoughtful homeowner might provide a welcome packet with instructions on how to use the appliances or where to find the circuit breaker,
All right.
you might need to create user guides, tutorials, or even training videos.
Yeah, to help users understand how to use our software effectively.
Exactly. The goal is to make the deployment process as seamless and user-friendly as possible.
Okay. Our software is out in the world.
Great.
Users are enjoying their new digital home, but our work isn't done yet, right?
You're right. Just that as a house requires regular maintenance and occasional renovations.
Yeah.
Software also needs ongoing care and attention.
So we're talking about fixing bugs that users might discover, addressing performance issues, or even adding new features based on user feedback.
Exactly. Software is rarely a finished product. It's an evolving entity that needs to adapt to changing needs and demands.
It's like keeping our software house in tip-top shape, making sure the roof doesn't leak, the appliances are working efficiently,
Yeah.
and maybe even adding a new room or two as the family grows.
I like that analogy.
Yeah.
And this ongoing maintenance and evolution is where version control comes in.
Okay.
Just as an architect keeps track of different revisions of blueprints,
Yeah.
version control allows us to manage different versions of our software track changes and easily revert to previous versions if needed.
It sounds like version control provides a safety net and a clear history of the software's evolution.
Precisely. And the article mentions a tool that can help us with this entire process, from creating the initial SDD to managing ongoing updates, Bit.ai.
Oh yes, Bit.ai. The article highlighted how this platform can be a game changer for software documentation.
It is.
What are some of the key benefits that it offers?
One of the biggest advantages is real-time collaboration.
Okay.
Multiple people can work on the SDD simultaneously, which is incredibly valuable for development teams.
So no more emailing different versions back and forth or struggling to merge changes?
Exactly. And Bit.ai seamlessly integrates with other development tools, allowing developers to easily embed code snippets or link to external resources. It also helps keep the documentation secure with features like access controls and document tracking.
It sounds like Bit.ai provides a centralized hub for everything related to software documentation,
It does.
streamlining the process and making it much more efficient.
Right.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
Yeah, we have.
We've explored the what's, the why, and the how of software design documents, from the initial planning stages to ongoing maintenance and evolution.
We have. And I think the key takeaway here is that SDDs are not just about documentation for documentation's sake.
Yeah.
They are essential tools for communication collaboration and ensuring the success of any software project.
Absolutely. They provide the blueprint, the roadmap, the guiding light for everyone involved in bringing that software vision to life.
Precisely. And by taking the time to create a comprehensive and well-structured SDD, we're setting ourselves up for a smoother development process, a higher quality product, and ultimately a more satisfying experience for everyone involved.
So whether you're a seasoned developer, a project manager, or just someone who's curious about the world of software development, understanding the power of SDDs can be a real game changer.
I couldn't agree more.
That brings us to the end of our deep dive into software design documents. We hope you found this exploration insightful and helpful. And if you're eager to learn more, be sure to check out the full article and explore the capabilities of Bit.ai. Until next time, happy coding.